Hey, welcome. So today we are jumping into one of the biggest and, let's be honest, one of the most intimidating questions for anyone of faith. It's a question that can feel really heavy, full of pressure and kind of mysterious. So let's try to demystify it together. Here it is. What is God's will for my life? We've all asked it, right? It often feels like we're supposed to be searching for the secret roadmap, a hidden set of instructions that we have to uncover. And that whole search can create so much anxiety. Like, what if I miss it? What if I choose the wrong career, the wrong partner, the wrong path?
But what if the answer isn't about finding a secret map at all? What if it's about shifting our entire perspective on the question itself? The source material we're digging into today, which is built around a prayer from the Apostle Paul in Colossians, suggests a totally different way of thinking about this. It's way less of a treasure hunt and way more of a transformation. Now, to get there, we've got to understand this really fundamental difference in thinking. You see it right here on the slide, conocer es hacer, which basically means to know is to do. See, our modern way of thinking, which is heavily influenced by Greek philosophy, often splits knowing from doing. You can have a bunch of knowledge in your head that has zero effect on how you actually live, but the text we're looking at comes from a world where that's just impossible.
This slide lays out that difference so clearly. On one side, you've got Greek thought, where knowledge can just be an abstract idea totally separate from your actions. But on the other side, in Judeo-Christian thought, real knowledge is always expressed in obedience. It is not a passive thing. To truly know God's will is to be compelled to live it. They're two sides of the very same coin. And this verse from Romans just illustrates the point perfectly. It says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And why? What's the purpose? So that you can test and approve what God's will is. You see, it's not about just collecting facts. It's a process that's meant to fundamentally change who we are and how we act.
Okay, so with that as our foundation, the source material gives us two really powerful principles. And the first one is honestly a huge relief. God's will is accessible. You can actually know it. This isn't some kind of secret knowledge that's only for a spiritual elite or a few enlightened folks. Paul's prayer in Colossians 1:9 is that all the believers would be filled with the knowledge of his will. It's meant to be known. So the crucial point here is the starting line isn't a mystery. God actually wants you to know his will. All right, on to our second principle, which builds right on top of the first one. If God's will is accessible, if you can know it, then it must also be applicable. It's not just some cool idea to understand. It's a reality to be lived out in a really visible, practical way. So what does this actual application will actually look like? Well, the Bible gives us some surprisingly direct answers. For instance, this quote from 1 Thessalonians just states it plainly. For this is the will of God, your sanctification. Now, sanctification is a key concept here. It really just means being set apart for a holy purpose. And the text doesn't just leave it there. It gets very specific. And just look at how practical this gets. Sanctification isn't some vague spiritual idea floating in the clouds. No, it's about abstaining from sexual immorality. It's about controlling your own body in holiness. It's about not wronging or cheating other people. These aren't mysterious directives. They're crystal clear commands about personal integrity and how we treat each other. This, right here, is the will of God in action. And the examples keep coming in places like Romans 12, moving from our personal purity out into our life in community. It's about being diligent, not lazy. It's about being constant in prayer, practicing hospitality. It even gets into the really tough stuff, like blessing those who persecute you and trying to live at peace with everyone. All of this is God's will. And suddenly, the question seems a lot less about what job should I take and a whole lot more about who am I becoming right here, right now. Okay, so let's connect these two big ideas now. We've got an accessible will that we can know and an applicable will that we can do. And as we've already seen, in the biblical way of thinking, these two things are totally inseparable. This slide just sums up the whole flow of Paul's prayer in Colossians perfectly. Why does he pray for them to be filled with knowledge? Well, the very next verse tells us the purpose. It's so that you may walk in a manner worthy of the Lord. See, knowledge isn't the final destination. It's the fuel for the journey. And that is the absolute core takeaway from our source, knowing and doing the will of God. They aren't two separate quests. When we focus on living out the clear, applicable will of God that we see right there in Scripture, a divine purpose is fulfilled in our lives. We can stop anxiously searching for some hidden path and just start faithfully walking on the one that's right in front of us. And we can end with this incredible promise from Psalm 138, which you see here. Jehová cumplirá su propósito en mí. In English, that's, the Lord will fulfill his purpose for me. And maybe that's the ultimate shift in perspective. Realizing that knowing God's will is less about us finding a plan and more about trusting that as we walk in His ways, He is the one who faithfully brings His purpose to completion in our lives. What might change if we really, truly lived with that confidence?